Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pageant Project. My next guest is Caroline Jones. She is a woman in business, 4 times author. She's just showing off now. By the way, if I'm looking over there, because I'm reading out her bio, and bear with me, it's going to take a while. 4 times author, TEDx speaker, and leadership/organizational coach based in Philadelphia, USA, which she says is the best city in the US. She was a pageant competitor and title holder for over a decade, most recently as Miss Pennsylvania Volunteer 2022. She currently serves on the Miss Pennsylvania Volunteer Board, along with her national role as a Miss Volunteer America President's Service Award Coordinator. Caroline is also currently pursuing her second master's degree, a master's in science in organizational dynamics, with a concentration in leadership and organizational coaching at the University of Pennsylvania. When she's not working or studying or researching or spending time in the pageant world, I don't know how much time is left, you can find her traveling the world. She's explored about 50 countries, training for her next marathon, playing the piano, or planning her wedding, which is later this year in Scotland. Well, Caroline, welcome to the show. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
There's no time left over there, surely.
Sometimes you have to drink a lot of coffee. Passion and coffee.
So the wedding, you said you're planning your wedding in Scotland. I remember you mentioned that. So is that all on track? Because that's got to take some time as well.
It is. We're blessed to have a coordinator who is helping manage all of our vendors over there and making it pretty easy for us. So we're just excited to have our family and friends fly over there with us and get a little glimpse of how much we love travel.
I've got to ask you, I think we talked about this when we bumped into each other, but why Scotland? Because it's obviously, and I've interviewed a lot of people from Scotland, so I mean this with all the love in the world, it's obviously not for the weather. So why Scotland?
It's stunning, but my fiance went to college and grad school at St. Andrews, and it's a magical place and wanted to get married there.
Right. How are you with a Scottish accent? Can you understand it, or is it all gibberish to you? Because a lot of Americans cannot.
I can understand it.
Okay. Well, that's probably going to be useful. And before we get into the serious stuff, talk to me about coffee. Because when I was over in America, one of the things I really struggled to find was a good coffee. And then I saw an Instagram thing you posted up, and it had actual beans. Whereas when I was staying at my Airbnb, it was a big tub of Folgers, whatever you call it. And I was like, no, come on. So talk to me about coffee.
I am always searching for beans to grind myself. But Philly also has some of the most wonderful coffee shops in this country. So when you come here, you'll definitely have to try out a few coffee shop recommendations.
Tell me more about Philly or Philadelphia, because I don't know anything about it. I don't think I may have interviewed 1 or 2 people from Philadelphia before, but I don't think we ever discussed Philadelphia before. So what is Philadelphia like? What is there to see, do? What is it like to live there versus what is it like to visit as a tourist? All that stuff.
There is something for everyone in Philly. Of course, it's the birthplace of our country. But really, if you love music, if you love sports, if you love food and drink, if you love arts and culture, there's truly something for everyone. I moved from a different area of Pennsylvania to Philly about 4 years ago and truly love it. Plan to stay here for a long time.
What is the weather like?
Right now, it is hot. It is in the 90s Fahrenheit all week. But in the winter it can get pretty chilly. We get snow, we get all the seasons, but you really have the best of everything.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll add it to my list. When is Miss Pennsylvania? When is Miss Pennsylvania Volunteer? You were saying?
Miss Pennsylvania Volunteer is October 10th and 11th that weekend. So we are ramping up. I actually have a board call after this interview where we're going over all the logistics for the state pageant. So we are, all the preparations are underway.
Right. Okay. Busy already. Okay. Let's get into the reason I wanted to talk to you is obviously we met at Miss Volunteer America, got to talking, and I just read out your bio. There's a lot going on there. And I really wanted to dig into how you feel your pageant journey, your pageant experience, and all that stuff that you learned during pageantry helped you get to or create the life that you've got now. Because you strike me as someone who not only has a lot going on, but you've been, for want of a better word, quite intentional about the life you've created for yourself. And you seem to have created a life that you really enjoy, which is not something that a lot of people can say. A lot of people get somewhere in life, Forbes 500, whatever, but they may not enjoy it. Whereas you seem to have created a life that you've enjoyed. So can you sort of backtrack as far as you can? How did you end up where you are today overall with all these amazing accolades? And then maybe how you feel pageantry helped you get to where you are today.
For sure. And I think this might be an interesting interview because I'm a former and not a current title holder, kind of reflecting back on the journey. So when I passed down my title at the end of 2022, I realized after a decade of pageantry that it was time for me to retire, and I was ready to move on to the rest of my life. I had, achieved the goal that I wanted to. I got to be the Miss Frontier America's first title holder outside of Tennessee, which was wonderful, and I really believed in the program, way, way, way in the beginning. But after my incredible year, I really did have to take a step back, and I missed the stage, and I missed the microphone and the platform that pageantry truly allows you to have. And I really had to take a step back and say, what do I want my life to be like now? I've left with so many skills: public speaking, networking, time management, philanthropy, all of those skills that we talk about that you develop during pageantry. And then now is the time to use them. So I was really intentional about what I wanted to do with my career. As a business owner, going back to school at UPenn for a master's in organizational dynamics and focusing on leadership and organizational coaching, deciding that I wanted to be a member, a big builder in my community, deciding that I wanted to continue the work that I had done with my platform of childhood literacy and education, writing books, speaking, and continuing all of those valuable things that I learned in pageantry. Because as you said in your interviews, it's so important to know your why. Because at some point the crown will go away, but you can step off stage and you can step into something bigger if you're able to define, your why and what you truly want to get out of your life.
I mean, there's so many different avenues that we can take, but let's start with your pageant why and your pageant journey. So it was over a decade. What got you interested in pageantry to begin with?
So way back in 2013, a long time ago, I had just published my first children's book. I have little props here because I think they add to the story. But this was my first children's book that I published back in 2013, called One More Book, Please. And I had realized that there were a lot of children in my hometown community that weren't able to read, and their parents weren't able to read either. They didn't own books. And as a 17-year-old, I was shocked by that, and I wanted to do something about that. So I got this little book published, and no one wanted to listen to 17-year-old Caroline at that time. I woke up one day and said, I want a voice and a platform. And, I competed in my first local pageant competition, won, and just fell in love with the whole experience of it. And, along the way, then all of these books came. This one is actually my favorite one. And we could talk about that when we talk about, TEDx in a bit. But I really had a desire to promote childhood literacy and education, and my platform was my why for those 10 years. So getting to write books, speak to students in schools and libraries and classrooms across, the U.S. and other countries was really incredible, and that was my why that was driving me for my pageant experience.
Right. So you started with a fairly well-formed why rather than having to formulate it after you started competing, which I think the way you did it is probably the preferable way, because you from the get-go you had an idea as to why you were doing this. Since you have the show and tell, the props there, why don't you walk us through each of those books? I don't want to dismiss. I'm currently writing my book. And I know how much work goes into it, so I don't want to just dismiss, there's a book, there's a book, there's a book. Why don't you walk us through each book and maybe do a bit of show and tell?
Sure. So my second book came after my first book. My first book was all about, getting kids inspired to read. But what I realized when I was reading to children in classrooms is that they didn't have the confidence in themselves to believe that they can be a leader. They thought that a leader was only the president or the teacher or a position of authority, and that they were too young and too small to, be a leader. And this book is called The Line Leader. In the book, Spider, the smallest of the animals, is the only animal without a classroom job, but she was the one who helps all of the other animals discover their strengths. And that's what I did my TEDx talk on. I did research before this book on children's mindset around leadership. Interviewed about 100 children through kindergarten through third grade, asking them questions about leadership. Read them the book, asked them questions after to see if it really did shift their mindset. So that's what my talk is all about as well. And that was such a fun project. This is my favorite of my books, actually.
Who did you say the main character in that book was?
Oh, Spider right here.
That's interesting because so many of the people I interview, particularly Americans and the Brits, are terrified of spiders, and you just made the spider the main character.
If there is a spider in my office, I don't want it there. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I made it cute and child friendly.
Right. Why is it called? Is it the line leader? I couldn't quite see. So,
yes.
I might be missing something here, but why is it the line leader?
So in America, in a lot of classrooms, from kindergarten through third grade, the line leader is the student with the position of authority that is the first in line. And one of the biggest responses when I was interviewing these children was, that they couldn't be the leader; it was only the president, only the teacher, etc. But that if they were going to name a student as a leader, they would say, oh, the line leader, that's a leader because they're first in line and they have a position of authority. When really that's not what leadership is about at all. It's not about being first. It's not about having the position of authority. It's not about having the title either. It's about what you're doing with it.
Right. It's interesting to me that you interviewed such young people and they were all already sort of dismissing themselves as potential leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea why that was the case? I mean, when you had the interviews, when you had the conversations, I mean, what transformations did you see?
They said they were too young and too small, and maybe one day when they grew up, they could be a leader, but not now.
Right. Okay.
And those were, children answers and children things to say. I think that it was deeper of sometimes what we believe, as human beings and as adults too. We think someone else might be a leader. We don't have that position of authority. We might not be the most senior person in our job, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to speak our voice.
It's interesting that those beliefs can start so early, and then over time they sort of get reinforced. Whereas I think the beautiful thing about working with young people, and you can speak to this, I'm sure, is if you can help change their beliefs when they're young, then they have a completely different life trajectory. I do want to go to the other books, but you mentioned this was the one that you gave the TEDx talk on. And as I mentioned to you, one of my friends was over there, Bailey Guy, and when she heard that you'd done a TEDx talk, she was like, that's her life goal. So can you just describe briefly how you went from the book to then being able to give a TEDx talk? Because there's a lot of pageant girls who want to be able to give a TEDx talk.
I think the TED organization, the TEDx organization, is such a phenomenal way to get your message out in 18 minutes or less on stage. Of course, I'm sure that lots of pageant girls watching this, enjoy TED Talks. But it was also a huge goal of mine. I applied to give it. There was an interview process, a video process. You had to have a draft of your speech and what you wanted to get across. And it shouldn't be just a motivational speech or a speech about your life. It should be something that, is either researched or interesting or educational. There's a lot of different parameters for it. But once you get in to speak at it, then you get to give your talk and people get to listen to it. And since then, not only have I spoke at TEDx, but I've been able to be a host and MC and then be on the organizing team of TEDx Penn at school that I'm getting my master's in, which is actually the largest student-run TEDx organization in the world.
Wow, you guys really are doing something different down there, aren't you? Can I ask? Let me ask the silly question first. Did you ever figure out why TEDx talks or TED Talks are 18 minutes? Like, why not 15? Or why is it 18? It always struck me as an odd number.
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sure it has something to do with people's attention spans or how much information. Sure. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I don't know that reason, though. That is a good question.
Okay. If anyone watching or listening ever finds out the answer, please let me know, because I've always been curious about it.
Yeah, I've been involved in the organization for quite some time. Don't know that.
That's okay. This is a random question, but let me ask you. So I'm going to put the link to your TEDx talk below this so people can watch it. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. What did it feel like? I mean, TED and TEDx is probably one of the best, if not the best known, public speaking platforms in the world. It's got an amazing backstory. It had amazing speakers on that stage. What was it like getting on that stage, delivering your message? I mean, you've competed on pageant stages before, and that's always kind of like a wow moment. That's giving you guys your moment. What was it like speaking on the TEDx stage?
It was incredible because when you're standing on that stage, you really do have a long time compared to just a pageant on stage question or an interview even to get your message across. And you've prepped for it, of course, and it's a very similar way of prepping for that as you would for pageantry, where you're rehearsing, getting on stage, getting stage ready. But it was an incredible moment where I got to share all of the work that I had done for this project with an audience on stage, but then for years to come online, I'm still talking about it and still sharing it, and it was just such a great moment.
And you said there was an interview process. Mm-hmm. How important do you think being a published author, having done those interviews, having done research into the topic, how important do you think those factors were in the TEDx organizer saying, yes, we want you to speak?
Very important because it shows dedication and that you've done research and put time into the process. You're not just applying to speak on stage without having done anything prior to that moment. So I would recommend if if it's your goal to go on a TEDx stage, to know your why, number one, have your research done, have what you want to get across, and then every TEDx is independently organized. So every application process, depending on your city or what city the conference is going to be a little bit different. But I think that having I think it can't hurt to be prepared.
No, absolutely not. And more logistics question. For people who are going to speak at TEDx Pennsylvania, as an example, or TEDx Philadelphia or whatever it is, do you have to come from that city or that state to be able to speak there?
No, you don't have to. You can come from anywhere, but I think it does help if you have some tie to the area.
Sure.
But people came from everywhere.
Right. Okay. Now we've still got 2 books to go, Caroline.
Oh, yes. Well, We Saved the Bees and Butterflies is next. This book is about STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and about these 2 little children who are planting a garden to save the bees and butterflies. What I like about this book is it's actually co-authored with 2 elected officials.
Wow, okay.
One a Democrat, one a Republican, and ultimately my message with my platform is that education should not be a partisan issue. This should be something that, regardless of politics, that everyone is supporting. So I loved that project because of that.
Well, how did you get them on board with that?
I interned when I was in college for one of these elected officials, and when I shared what I was doing with my previous 2 books, he really loved the idea and was interested in collaborating with me for a 3rd.
Right. Okay. That's something I didn't know about you. I feel like every time I speak to you, there's something else I'm learning.
Always learning something new.
And the 4th and final book, at least for now.
Final book for now, because, there might be more in the works. You never know. This one is called Floating Strength, and this is about a bunch of rainforest characters escaping a rainforest. They're all different. They all have different strengths and weaknesses and have to learn how to use their strengths and work together to, escape this disaster. And this one is really, really cute. This one was published right before winning Miss Pennsylvania Volunteer, and I got to share this throughout that whole year.
When do you get, and I'm asking this as a published author myself, when do you get the inspiration to publish your book, or when do you get an idea to publish a book? Again, a lot of pageant girls want to publish a book. I think it's becoming a lot more accessible today than it was when you published your first book and when I published my first book. But what's your process for writing it? Do you have the thought, the inspiration, and then I think what's really interesting, especially with that third book, you got other people involved. And see, when I wrote my first book, which is all about women's mental health, I didn't just start writing, I interviewed people. I was leaning on other areas of my life, people I knew, connections I had, and I was like, I want to bring people on board. I just don't want to write it myself. And you seem to have done something very similar yourself. What's the process?
And I should say that two of the other two, not my first one, but these two also have co-authors on them. The Line Leader is co-authored by a professor that I had while I was in college, Dr. Savchik, who's wonderful, and also another professor, Dr. Setsko, also from college, and I wanted to, get their expertise as well to weigh in. How do I get my inspiration? Really, it comes from if I realize there's a need for something and it's a gap that I believe that I can fill. So I think that if you go about your week or your month and just kind of take note about something that you might not like in the world, or if you notice that you have a complaint about something, and then instead of just complaining about it into the void,
do something about it.
Do something about it. Like, how can I contribute to this? If this is an issue that is, concerning to me, or something is wrong here, how can I possibly use the skills that I have to fix it? So that's where I get the inspiration usually for my books.
I'm currently writing my book, as I mentioned. It's The Beginner's Guide to Pageantry. Literally, I think I'm just going to call it that. And it's interesting because I wrote that not because it's a book I wanted to write, but it's the book that I felt was needed. So it's funny because when you said you see something wrong, do something about it, I was like, okay, there's a lack of information for pageant beginners. I don't know if you can remember back when you started, and it's like, I don't know where to start. And like, I don't want you to necessarily go and get like a $200 an hour coach. I say that because that's how much I charge. But maybe I can give some of that beginner information just in a book so you can read, so it's a bit less overwhelming. Can you remember what it was like back when you first started? Like, there's so much stuff you don't know.
Yes. I remember I didn't know how to walk on stage or how that was different from walking in normal life. I did not know how to glue on eyelashes. I did not know how to do my own butt glue. Just all of those funny little things. And I was so lucky to have some really, really wonderful help. One person that comes to mind in particular from before, I won my first, title, was a woman who owns a gown store in my hometown of northeastern Pennsylvania. And, I come in, I'm looking for a pageant gown. I have no idea, what I'm looking for. And she was so kind, helped me, really showed me how to walk in it, gave me not only the guidance that I need, but also some encouragement and support that this was something that I would be able to succeed in. And I did win that first title. And this woman has stayed in my life, and now I'm buying my wedding gown from her, so many years later. So it's really incredible the amount of help that I had when I was younger, but I needed it, and I looked for it in every direction because, boy, did I need it.
Yeah. Do you want to just give this lady a shout out since you're buying her wedding gown from her?
Yes. Kathy Nardone, if you're watching this, thank you.
Wow. Okay. Now, there's a lot of other stuff I want to get to just to flesh out this picture of who you are. So we've gone into the authorship, we've gone to the TEDx talk. I think you need to try to explain what you do for a living currently. And I say try because when I was listening to you, I got it, but I think I still had the questions like, okay, so what do you do from a 9 to 5? What does that look like? But why don't you start with what is it that you do currently?
Yes. So currently my full-time career is in finance. And then in addition to that, I also am an organizational and leadership coach, which is more recent, that I've developed through the University of Pennsylvania and working on that master's program.
Right. And I don't know how much you can go into because one of the things you can't give financial advice. And I know a lot of pageant girls are not so good. I mean, pageant girls are very good when it comes to spending money. When it comes to the other side, maybe not so great. But what side of finance do you work in?
I'm a financial advisor.
Right. Okay. And let me just ask, the organizational and leadership, is that going into corporations? Is that in terms of personal, like more life coaching? Which aspect is it?
So going into corporations and helping, leaders and specifically business owners in, whatever they need to grow their business.
Right. Okay.
So that is my own business, which is actually called Crown Coaching and Consulting. I bet you can guess where I got the name idea for that. What I realized, especially through this master's program that I've been doing, and I realized it from pageantry, is that it was hard to take off the crown. And for a lot of people in life, it's hard to go into retirement, or it's hard to go into the next phase of life, or whatever transition they are in. And sometimes for a business owner, especially if they're going from either a place where they're an employee to now working as their own boss, that's a hard transition. Or it might be going from working to retirement. And so those are the type of people that I help transition to, from point A to point B, where they want to go next in life.
This is an area that you're studying at the moment, so your knowledge base obviously is evolving, and I'm sure as you work with more clients, you learn a lot from that as well. I mean, as a coach, you learn as much from your clients as they learn from you, I like to say. Can you give people an idea, like what's the main framework, or what are some of the common issues that you deal with, and what are the sort of suggested solutions? Because not just in pageantry, but in corporations, there's a lot of upheaval going on at the moment, particularly in America, where I feel like, and we mentioned AI briefly when we were talking, there's a lot of upheaval. There's a lot of people who aren't sure whether they're going to have a job tomorrow, whether they're going to be replaced by an AI chatbot or something similar. And maybe they've worked 10, 20 years at the same job, and they figured, I work 20, 30, 40 years, I'll get my retirement, I'll get my 401k, and I'll be set. And then suddenly, nope, you're gone tomorrow. And in that sort of uncertainty, I think a lot of people need guidance as to how to transition, how to move on, because it's a lot safer to sort of keep doing what I'm doing and stick your head in the sand. But I think really in this day and age, that's very, very dangerous. So can you give people an idea, like what are your ideas? What are your suggested solutions? What are the issues that people tend to struggle with the most?
Sometimes I see a person who might be a business owner or, a leader in an organization, and they come with a work problem. Their employees are not doing something that they want them to do, or they're struggling with a business decision, or they need help with a certain strategy. And they come in with the work problem. But then if you ask more questions and you go a little bit deeper, a lot of the times they're just human problems that we all experience. And something that I focus on is being very well-rounded. So, it's finding that why, just like we did in pageantry, and it's designing the life that you want to, live for yourself. And I always say, just kind of in my life, this has nothing to do with, the coaching aspect. But I always want to have a wonderful 9 to 5, but also an equally good 5 to 9. I want to have a well-rounded life that I'm enjoying and loving and living. And I think no matter who you are in life, you probably have different things going on: family, friends, travel, spirituality, academics or education, your pets, your passions, your whatever it might be. And most people don't just focus on their business, but they want to have a multifaceted life. And so I feel like when someone is a leader of an organization and comes in with a business problem, there's probably a little bit more underneath the surface. And it's about finding out what those things are, and then helping that person develop the life that they truly want. So I do have a coaching model that I've been working on, that's based in adult development theories and humanistic psychology and intentional change theory. More to come on that, but it is pending trademark, so I don't want to talk about it too much at the current moment. But stay tuned for that.
It's interesting when you're discussing all this. I often say, and I didn't come up with this, I studied as a coach under Tony Robbins, and he always said the presenting problem is never the actual problem. And it's like peeling away the layers of the onion. I find the same whether it's business coaching, which I've done, or pageant coaching, and people will come to you with, here's my problem, or here's my issue, or A-type people like to say, here's my challenge, or here's my frustration. We don't like to say we have a problem. And then you dig away, and it's almost never the actual issue. It's like what you said, it's always a human issue. It's like, okay, you're afraid of moving, like, oh, I got a revenue issue, and what it turns out to be is like you're afraid of change, or something. So have you found that to be true in the work that you've been doing?
Absolutely. And even with, so I have coached a few pageant women. I don't think I'm quite to the international extent as you are. But I have had women come to me and say, I need help public speaking. I need help with my branding. I need help with my resume, whatever it is. And really it's an issue of confidence, and they want to develop confidence, or, the issue underlying might be that they, want to develop their why. So I think there's always something under the surface, and it's important to just dig a little bit deeper and ask those questions. And that's one reason I really admire you, even in your social media. And I haven't known you too long, but you go deeper, and I think that's really needed as a coach, whether it's in the pageant industry or in organizations.
Sounds like we're kindred spirits in terms of wanting to help people and understand people. I've always been fascinated hearing other people's life stories, and I don't take credit for that myself. I think that's just a God-given curiosity. Leadership, and specifically women in leadership. You've worked in this field a lot. What do you think, and this is like the cliche question, like what's the most important facets in leadership? But I do want to ask you, specifically for young women who are looking to go into leadership roles, because that's very often what pageant girls are wanting to do and are called on to do. What do you think some of the most important qualities in a leader are?
I think as a woman specifically, it's very important to use your voice. And I think that, in pageantry, we have such a supportive group that it's wonderful that we're surrounded by. But then sometimes when you go into the business world, it's a little bit less supportive. And it's funny that, I'm was one of the older women in pageantry, and I'm the very youngest now, in my work. And I was told by people, you have red hair, not gray hair. Why should I trust you? And those kind of comments, which is really funny to me. But there's never a right age or right time. It's important to use your voice, trust yourself that you're competent, that you have the knowledge that you need, and use your voice, and don't be afraid to do so. I think finding mentors is also so important. I have been mentored by some wonderful people that have helped propel my career. And I think it's important to surround yourself by people who are there to both give you good advice or to ask you questions, and to figure out whether you need support or challenge or solutions or comfort. And I think the people you surround yourself with are key to your career.
Let me ask you about the using your voice. I find that, again, with a lot of pageant girls, because that's the bulk of what I coach at this present point, the women that I work with, they do have a lot to say. They're very intelligent. It's not like they don't have a message or they have no idea what they're talking about. The issue for them is in using their voice, there's fear. There's fear because if you use your voice, maybe someone's going to criticize you. Or in a corporate setting, let's say, if you use your voice or you are, let's say, pretty vocal, then very often for a woman, you're judged like if a man said the same thing, be like, yes, he's, alpha male, he's a boss. If a woman says that, oh, she's being bossy, it's all this other. So can you just speak a little bit to that fear? Because I think a lot of women want to use their voice and they have something to say, but they have this inherent fear that if they say it, they're going to be judged in a way. I'm not saying that it's fair, but it's a way that it is. What can you do about that?
I think we're afraid of the fear. We're afraid of the uncertainty. You said the word if. We're afraid that if we speak, then this person might say this, and we're afraid of that might or that uncertainty. So we could break that by saying, yeah, people are going to criticize you, and you're going to fail, and you're going to, someone's going to laugh at you potentially, but that's the worst that's going to happen, and then you're going to move on. And if you don't say something, and if you don't speak up and use your voice, then then you won't, and the opportunity will pass you by. But just having that deep conviction that the world is better off because you're saying something, because you're speaking up, because you're using your voice. So I found myself, especially earlier on in my career, to be really afraid of that uncertainty that, oh my gosh, if I say something, this person might say this. And at a certain point, I had to overcome that fear, even in business and, getting clients. I'm about to, next week, I start a course that I'm teaching for the University of Pennsylvania about mindset and actions to grow a business as a business owner. And my very first lesson plan is on mindset, and that it's on reframing failure, and that, yes, you're going to fail. I'm taking the uncertainty away from you. You're going to fail, but that's okay. And that's actually a good thing. Failure doesn't have to be negative.
I think this is a good point to jump off to how pageantry sort of helped you to where you are today. And I do want to, if you can draw a distinction between sort of what aspects you think were just inherent in you, and then which parts pageantry helped with. Because, I mean, you strike me as someone very obviously who's multi-passionate and multi-talented. And, I don't think you can give pageantry credit for everything and who you are. I think that's asking too much of it. So in terms of, where you are today, how much of it was your inherent qualities, your curiosities, your multi-passionate personality, and which aspects do you feel pageantry really specifically helped you with?
I always think that pageants are such a special place because it is a place where you get to show off all of those parts of yourself. I've always been a competitive person, but never very athletically inclined. So sports, unfortunately, was not part of my toolkit. But I felt like pageants were a way that I was able to show that competitive spirit, show my talent and passion for music, specifically piano, to use my voice by promoting, the platform that I was really passionate about, to get to travel and meet people and have personal and professional development and really take all of those opportunities. And so it was a way to combine all of the things that I really, really loved in my life. And it's hard to find a space like that for young women that really combines all of those different ways that we are multifaceted. Our current Miss Pennsylvania volunteer, Mary Ellen, I've been friends with her for years and years and years. She has a brand called hashtag She Can Do Both, which I absolutely love because it's true, as pageant women, we're not just one thing or another. I am a woman in business who is a pageant girl, who, is a speaker and an author and these things. And pageant girls are all of these different things. And women are all of these different things, even if we're not in pageants, and we can do both. We do not have to be confined into a little box, even if society sometimes wants us to be. And so I think the ability to do both is a really, really special part of pageantry.
Which skill sets do you feel pageantry helped you develop most? Was it confidence? Was it public speaking? Was it just a general motivation? You said you're competitive, so is that sort of that's what really got you into it? Like, which skill sets do you think pageantry really helped you develop?
I think it was a focus, and to have a focus on a goal, and to use all of the other skills and strengths that I have to focus on something very specific. Every time I got on that stage, any stage, I truly felt that I was the best Caroline at that particular moment in time. And that best Caroline was different from year to year. And thankfully, it was a better Caroline every year. But each time I stepped on that stage, I really believed that, I had focused all of my energy and strengths and attention into that moment. So I think that for me, I loved public speaking since I was little. I was just, my little sister is getting married next week, and I'm giving her maid of honor speech. And, I was just thinking about some childhood memories, and a couple that were popping up was when we were, 3 years old and 5 years old and giving all these performances to our family. And we always wanted to be, yapping. We wanted to be performing or singing or talking or on stage. So I never had a fear of public speaking. But I think that all of my interests, they're pretty varied. And I think pageantry just focused that and gave me a kind of a clear line and a clear goal that I was shooting for.
So your young sister beat you to the altar, huh?
She did. But it's really special that, we're getting married in a few months of each other. We're each other's maids of honors, and we're very close.
Good for you guys. I'm similar to yourself. I've always enjoyed public speaking, which I think is very rare. But I think I know the answer to this. Let me ask you, what was your favorite part of competing in pageantry?
My favorite part, you mean on stage competition or in general?
Just in general, which was your favorite part of competition?
My favorite part of competition was probably the talent competition. I've been a pianist since, I was 4 or 5 years old, 29 now. So, for quite a while, I still really, really love playing the piano, although I'm kind of only performing it for my cats at this point. But hopefully we'll get back on stage doing that soon. But I really loved the talent portion. Um, Interview was another favorite part for me. See, it's so hard to name all of them because I'm going to name each area of competition now and why it was my
They're
favorite.
all your favorite, yeah.
All my favorites. I also loved, fitness and wellness. I think getting up on stage in a swimsuit is one of the most empowering things. And, I've explained it to people at work by saying, if you have the confidence to do that, you probably have the confidence to do pretty much anything else. But as someone who has, really prioritized health, and now I'm looking at health in a whole different way after pageants as well. My, idea of it has shifted a little bit in a new stage of life, and now I'm, running a marathon in a couple months, and training in a different way. But health has always been a huge part of my life, and I think a really necessary part of being a title holder.
Sounds like the thing that pageantry really gave you the most was that focus. So that sort of space and that motivation to work on yourself. It sounds like you miss it. What have you found to help sort of fill that hole or to scratch that itch? Because as a former, I always say I never trust any pageant girl who says she's retired. So, asterisk here. But as a former title holder, is there anything that you found that can scratch that same itch? Because just speaking from my experience personally, it's like pageantry, there's a unique sort of person it attracts. And you guys are like moths to a flame. It's like that woman who is intelligent, ambitious, multi-passionate, but wants to give back. You guys just flock to pageantry, and then you stay there because you never find something that can quite scratch all those same itches. So have you found anything that can approach it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been tough. And, after I gave up my title, I took a little bit of time off, but then I did join, the board of the state pageant, and it's been really rewarding to be on the other side. But no, you're 100% correct. There was a huge loss of identity, and I really had to take a step back and say, do I really believe that I can be as meaningful and impactful without the crown? And I was worried that I had peaked so young in life, and I was worried that, I wouldn't be able to make as big of a difference without the crown. But then, after a couple years of developing all of those strengths in different ways, and I really did look at the areas of competition and say, how can I still make this part of my life, but in a new way? And what does that look like for me, at this stage of life? So, I'm able to find all of those little things that pageantry brought me in different areas of my life, and it has been rewarding. But you're right, there's truly nothing as special as pageantry, and combining all of those things together.
I mean, you mentioned that you're on the board for Miss Pennsylvania Volunteers, so you obviously have one foot still firmly planted in the pageant world, so to speak. Can you walk us through, you said that you finished competing, or that you hung up the heels, so to speak, because you had accomplished what you wanted to accomplish in the pageant world. I speak to a lot of women, coach a lot of women who are really struggling or really struggle to transition on or move on from pageantry. Now, obviously, there are ways that you can stay involved with it, but let's say they never won their dream crown, or never won a crown, or they never accomplished really what they wanted to accomplish because, you can't control the results. And I'm picturing one particular woman who I was speaking to the other day, and she had a lot of resentment about her pageant journey overall because she never felt like she really got what she wanted or what she was entitled to or what she was promised. What would you say to women like that who are struggling to move on?
Now, I think the solution comes before even entering that pageant. And I think it goes back to your book on beginners. It's about finding your why and having a goal that isn't just winning the crown. It's having all those goals for yourself about how you want to develop your life going forward that you can achieve whether or not a panel of judges decides that you're the one on that given day. But I mean, as far as someone who is struggling post pageantry, similarly, I think that it's pursuing the other passions that you want in life and thinking back to the reason, why did you get involved in pageantry? What made you think that this was filling some sort of gap in your life? And what other ways are there to, maybe fill that gap? Is it service? Is it advocacy or, philanthropy? Is it getting on stage in other ways like performing or speaking? Is it, um, you know, talking with other women and developing friendships and developing some sort of sisterhood or community and figuring out what is lacking and what other
Yeah.
ways you can do that.
Yeah. So exploring your other passions basically and leaning into those, which I think is a good formula for moving on. I mean, pageant hangover is very real. I feel like I still have a bit of it after
Yeah.
after being on the other side of the world. But I will say Miss Volunteer America was something else. Let's talk a bit about that because you're on the board for Miss Pennsylvania Volunteer. I first saw you on stage at Miss Volunteer America. You were giving out, what was it? The presidential
Service award. So we got to honor 25 of the state title holders who had a combined total of over 10,000 service hours, which was so incredible. So it was really an honor to be on that stage and presenting that award.
Why have you chosen to continue working with the Miss Volunteer America organization and be on the board of Miss Volunteer Pennsylvania? And I ask this simply because you're obviously someone who has a lot going on. You have a lot of different passions which you could indulge. And at some point, when you're going to say yes to one thing, there are some things you have to say no to because you can't do everything. So why have you chosen to continue your involvement?
All the ladies on the board poured into me so much when I was the title holder, and being able to also pour into the next woman in various ways is very, very rewarding to me. And I knew that I wanted to get involved and pay it forward, and do what all the people like Kathy or like so many others did for me throughout my whole journey.
What is it like being on the other side? I mean, being a competitor first and now being on the other side, what has it, have you learned any lessons or appreciated certain things differently?
It's surely more relaxing.
Fair enough.
I was just kind of laughing and hanging out backstage. Like there were no nerves back there for sure. Before nationals, but I think that you're looking at pageantry with a different lens, and you still get to be on stage, and you still get to be part of that sisterhood and be part of that community. And I think that community and the people are so special. And thinking about how my state directors have poured just so much of their hearts and souls into helping me prep, and helping me be stage ready and helping me with my appearances, but even more importantly helping me personally and just being there for me as a human being. And that's something that I want to do for the next woman that walks in these heels.
Give people, you mentioned the 10,000 hours statistic, which is absolutely amazing. Can you highlight some of the stories, whether it's from this year or previous years, of girls who you think have really poured back into their community?
Sure. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's just so many of them. I mean, I mentioned, our current state title holder who's just done a wonderful job of so many appearances and, really puts her heart and soul into it. Um, a woman that came to my mind as well that I feel like I've had a very similar path with is a woman named Annika Wooten, who is Miss Kansas 20. Oh, I hope I don't mess up the year, but I think 2019 and 2020. And she actually has a Beyond the Crown program that I kind of went through with her. And she was really instrumental in helping me when I retired from pageantry. And she's still involved in various ways as well as, a judge, a coach. And so I just see these women that are a little bit ahead of me in pageantry that I look up to as well. And so I hope that current title holders may look up to me as someone who, has gone through all of these things and then has continued different aspects of pageantry in her life in various ways in her career and, her volunteerism. I hope that I would be a role model for them as Annika and others who went before me were role models for me.
Where do you think we'll see the Miss Volunteer America organization, let's say in 5 years or 10 years from now? And I say this because I went over there, from the other side of the world, which is no small thing to do. And witnessing, I'm so glad I did it, because getting to witness it in person, I've been around pageantry for about 10 years now, not the longest time, but I've done, over 300 interviews. And I've never seen a production in person that not only it looked so good and sounded so good, but with the visitation, you got to see the state title holders who are all vying for, one crown, but they genuinely seemed really happy and excited to be there. And that's not a small thing, because I have to say that doesn't always happen. So where do you think, what makes MVA different and stand out? And where do you think we're going to see this organization a few years down the track?
I think it's just going to keep growing and growing and getting bigger and better every single year, which is hard to imagine because it's already so magical. But it was incredible to be part of the inaugural experience and just treated like an absolute queen for my nationals experience, and really living my dream of, walking on that stage. And it was amazing. And every single year that goes by, it's just growing and blossoming. And I don't know where we'll see it in 5 to 10 years, but I think it'll be even bigger and even better. And knowing the people who, Allison and everyone behind who are putting so much love into it all year round is really incredible. I really think it takes a village too. So, at the national level, but at the states level, I think the states will continue to grow. I think that the local pageants will continue to grow as well. I think it's just going to keep getting bigger. But I do agree that all of the women, I think it attracts a really special woman who is well-rounded and really believing of the system and of the sisterhood. And I mean, Miss Wisconsin, her name comes to mind because I was talking with her recently. Miss Wisconsin Volunteer from my year in 2022 is coming to my bachelorette next month, and so I'm still close with all of these women that I competed with, which is really amazing.
It's hard to imagine it getting bigger and better. I'm excited to, but part of me is also curious as to see how it can get bigger and better. And I agree with you. There's a certain, and again, I say this as someone who's interviewed hundreds of pageant contestants from all around the world. There's something different about the caliber and passions and we talked about mindset, the mindset of the women competing at Miss Volunteer America. I feel like I could interview or talk to any one of them and have a really interesting conversation, which again doesn't happen all the time. I was reflecting, I did a video the other day about how important I thought it was that the MVA organization gave you guys your moment on stage, both literally and metaphorically. The girls had their appearances and they were signing autographs. And I feel like that's so important, not from a shallow perspective, but it's almost like a reward for you've been doing the service, you've been the state title holder for 6 months, 12 months, and you deserve to feel like not a monetary reward, but an in-kind, like these people that you've got young girls coming up to you, and I had the same experience, like young girls coming up wanting photographs with me. Can you just speak to how important it is that MVA gives you guys that moment on stage, that kind of celebrity feeling, that moment that you're feeling like a queen? Because I don't want to understate that. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And not from a shallow perspective at all either, but I think it does reward each woman, gives them their moment in the spotlight, and gives all of the other, young women that are aspiring to be like them something to really look up to and strive for as well. And I do think that it goes back to the state pageants and the local pageants. And that's where I think that we're going to see a lot of growth there, because as more women get involved and more women will be competing for those local titles and those state titles. And that's where I think a lot of growth will happen as well.
Yeah, I think the overall sentiment on social media, as far as I've seen it, has been very positive. A lot of people have been like, yes, this is the next up and coming pageant. Production values are amazing, and people are getting excited about it. For people watching who might want to enter Miss Pennsylvania Volunteer, do you have the details? I'm sure you do somewhere.
I do. In fact, I've created the application, so I know all the details,
Oh,
but
okay.
it is all on our website, which is MissPennsylvania.Net. So you can go on there. Where is it? No, excuse me, it's MissPennsylvaniaVolunteer.com. The national website is net. And you can go in there, you can download the application directly, and all of the instructions are on there. You can also visit at Miss PA Vol on Instagram. The link to the application is also in our bio. But we are accepting applications now and are currently recruiting. We already have, a wonderful class, and we're growing it. I'm so excited for the state pageant because the state pageant gets better and better every year as well.
Give me a bit of insight, and maybe to the people who are thinking about applying, give me a bit of insight into the state pageant, because obviously I haven't seen the state pageant. What kind of things do you normally have planned for the girls? What's the experience like for your state competitors?
So we have a wonderful, welcome party, welcome gala on that Friday night where everyone gets to, meet each other, get to know each other in a friendly way. The board is there, volunteers are there, families are welcome to come as well, and of course the title holders. And then the next day, that Saturday, we do our rehearsals throughout the morning, we do our interviews in the afternoon, and then the pageant in the evening. And it's a wonderful experience to go to it. So highly recommend you flying, all the way from Australia to come to the state pageant. But I think that you can feel just the level of, passion from every single volunteer. We're all volunteers. We're not getting paid. We all genuinely want to be there, and we are ready to help, every single woman that comes in. And, I talk a little bit in the beginning when we do our little orientation about that why and about, what do you want to remember from this weekend? And I think that every woman leaves with a really positive experience, whether they win the crown or not. And it's been great to see, repeat competitors come back, which is always a good sign that we're doing something good.
I say that's the best sign that you should enter a pageant is the women competing. Even if they didn't win, they go back and compete again. Because if you didn't enjoy it, you probably wouldn't go back again.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, again, I want to emphasize, and I'm not getting paid to say this. All the interactions I've had with the MVA system, whether it's on the national or state level or whatever it is, they've been highly positive. And that, again, I don't want to undersell that, because that's not an experience that I think I've had maybe ever in pageants. And so I really think it attracts a certain type of person. And I think it does come back to mindset. I mean, volunteer is literally in the name. Yeah. And so if you're not interested in volunteering, you're probably not going to look at Miss Volunteer America. Yeah. But if you're someone who's interested in volunteering, you're interested in putting other people before yourself, so to speak. And I think that's a very important facet of leadership, which we've discussed, is you need to put other people first. You need to serve other people first. I don't think leadership is about making yourself the most important person in the room. I think it's about listening to other people first and foremost. I mean, Caroline, there's so many things I could talk with you about. Is there anything that you feel like we haven't discussed?
We've covered a lot. I'm sure that we could literally write some books, about that. But well, I guess for you, as you're writing this book on A Beginner's Guide to Pageantry, what is something that you would want to hear from a former title holder, as you start on your journey of writing your book?
I probably will send you a draft copy. You can give me your thoughts. I'm trying to not make it too long, because one of the things is I want it to be very easily digestible. If I write War and Peace and it takes 5 years to, because if you're interested in pageantry, you want something that's quick, easy, and practical. I asked this on social. I was thinking about getting someone to write the foreword of the book, and who do you think would be someone who could write the foreword for a pageant book? Because obviously you want someone who's well respected, who's got the same moral values and beliefs you have. But I have some ideas. I'm curious as to, and this is kind of putting you on the spot, who would you get to write the foreword for A Beginner's Guide to Pageantry?
Yeah, someone who's, an author and a former title holder. I see where you're going with this question.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think maybe we could write a book together at some point or do a course together, especially on the mindset.
Yeah, no, for sure. I did see that you put that on social. I would think someone that shares the same passion and thoughts that you do is someone that I would look for, someone who shares your why.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a silly question. I always have to ask about food at least once. And I'm building my knowledge of the various American states by interviewing you guys. So I've been to Wisconsin or Milwaukee. I know there's cheese there. Tennessee is barbecue. Texas is barbecue. There's a lot of barbecue. Berkeley asked me what a cookout was, and I embarrassed myself because I didn't know what that was. What's Philadelphia cheesesteak?
Oh my gosh, you've never heard of
I know what cheese and I know what steak is. And when I was staying at the DoubleTree where we met, they had cheese. I had to ask the people there what half of the things were because I didn't know why the cheese was there. I'd never seen Cheerios, and the Lucky Charms are marshmallows in your cereal. I'm like, okay, what's a Philadelphia cheese steak?
So it is a big hoagie roll. So I use hoagie, which is also kind of Pennsylvania, like a sub sandwich. Right. Big roll with like shredded steak on it, and then American cheese, and Philly puts on cheese whiz, and just kind of anything unhealthy you could think of is probably combined in there. That is a big Philly thing. You can get cheesesteaks at any sporting event, at really anywhere throughout the city. There's the more touristy places and the less touristy places. I myself am actually a vegetarian, so I don't partake in the official cheesesteaks. But one of my favorite places in Philly to get vegetarian cheesesteaks is Campo's. And before every Philadelphia Eagles game, I will have a Campo's vegetarian cheesesteak.
Why do Americans love cheese? Why do you guys love cheese so much?
It's pretty good. It's probably also like addictive, chemicals in there. That's what I would assume. But I'm on the marathon diet right now, so sticking to all the vegetarian protein that I can.
It's funny, every time I ask about American foods, what the favorite foods are, no one ever says anything that's vaguely healthy. Yeah. It's always something that you could never possibly eat if you were on a pageant diet. Why are you doing a marathon? You were bored and you just wanted to run away from life's problems? Or I'm not a runner. I can't. I'm competitive. Tennis is my thing. It's competitive. Yeah. It's like meditation for me. Like I can't sit down and meditate. I know you do a lot of yoga. I had a meditation teacher. My brain goes a million miles an hour. For me to meditate, I need something that's very intense. So tennis, I did Olympic weightlifting. That demands attention because if you don't focus on it, you drop the weight on you, and that's not pretty. But marathon, I used to think I wanted to do one because everyone said it, and then I realized, you know what, I hate running, and my mind wanders, and I get bored, and I run into trees, I fall into potholes. Why are you doing a marathon?
Sometimes, I was on an 11-mile run yesterday, and I was asking myself that same question. But it's a hobby that my fiance and I both have. Right. It's kind of, a couple hours to be outside without our phones or any screens to talk to each other and about our week, and just kind of, enjoy nature, enjoy outside, and do something that's physically challenging, getting in, great shape for the wedding. But it's a good challenge for myself. I feel like I've challenged myself, academically and, career-wise and in other ways. And so this is a good physical challenge for me that doesn't really have anything to do with looks, but is really about, performance. And I'm only competing against myself in the marathon. The goal is just to finish and to not break any bones.
I think if you're running a marathon and you're breaking bones, something's gone wrong. I would be, from what I've heard, I'd be more worried about my feet. And you definitely don't want to run. The one thing I know is you don't want to run in shoes that you've not broken in, because that will end very badly.
Very, very important. And, diet, exercise, or diet and sleep and shoes and the gear are just as important as getting miles. I don't know if you saw my crowning photo from Miss Pennsylvania Volunteer 2022, but I was actually in a boot. I had broken my foot in Paris a couple weeks prior to the state pageant. So I actually did break my foot and compete and win in a boot.
Oh, that's the secret to winning a pageant. Compete in a boot.
I wouldn't say it was the secret to winning a pageant, but I would say it was the most relaxed I'd ever been.
Hopefully not because you dosed on painkillers. How did you break your foot?
So this was back in 2022 when COVID was still there, but we had kind of been vaccinated and all that by then. But I had gone on a trip to Paris and unfortunately got COVID while I was there. I was quarantined in France for about 2 weeks, could not leave my Airbnb. But while I was there, I fell down a flight of stairs in the Airbnb, broke my foot. And then had to come back to America and compete in the state pageant a couple weeks later. And so that's the boot story.
Is this an isolated? You don't do this very often, falling downstairs. That's not a hobby of yours.
Only bone I ever broke right before the pageant.
Wow. Okay. And you were stuck in your Airbnb, and then you chose that time to break your. Okay, that mustn't have been a very pleasant experience. Let's I've kept you on for a while. Let's move towards the final 10. But just before I do, is anyone that you want to give a particular shout out to or say thanks to for supporting you along your journey?
My family has been so wonderful to me. I know that's a cliche answer to be thanking my family members, but for me, my family is, my parents, my sister, my fiance, and, just so many people that have been along with me for different parts of my journey and have seen all the behind the scenes, of every different part, not just the finished product on stage. And I'll always be grateful for them.
And we're none of us the finished product at this point in time either. So we'll see where we're going to end up in a year, 5 years, 10 years from now.
Thank goodness.
Let's go through these final 10. Let's put you back into pageant mode. Number 1, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word? Wow, I've never been asked that before in an interview. But I would have to say my favorite word is grit, which is a passion and perseverance for long-term goals. I like to think of myself as a gritty person. And back to TED Talks, if you've ever seen Angela Lee Duckworth's TED Talk on grit, it's one of the most life-changing 6 minutes of your life, which basically she says that through all of her research, that the key to success isn't your IQ, it's not how smart or how talented you are, but it's having a passion and perseverance for reaching your long-term goals.
Yeah. What is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. This is very interesting. Once again, I've never been asked that question before, but I would say pop when people refer to soda as pop.
But isn't that how all Americans speak?
Not in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Look, as an Australian, it's very confusing sometimes because, soda is pop or Hoover is a vacuum, then a sandwich is a burger, then you said hoagie. I'm like, what's a hoagie? And I don't know. It's like I'm speaking English, but it's a completely different language. So I was just getting used to saying pop. You're saying you don't like it.
I think I probably just said a very controversial thing for other states who are watching this.
Okay. All right. Well, we can clip this out and put it on my social then and see what sort of reaction it gets. Number 3, in life, what gets you excited? What turns you on?
Travel. Truly one of the biggest passions of my life. In the past, decade, I've been able to travel to about 50 countries. And every single one of them, I learned something new about the world and about myself.
What turns you off?
When people are closed-minded to things. I believe that if you are not learning, you are dying.
What sound or noise do you love?
When my I love the sound of the piano. And any sort of like soothing music. If I'm ever stressed, I'm either playing piano or listening to some sort of meditation sound, or just soothing music in the background.
What sound or noise do you hate?
my cats hissing at each other.
I knew we were going to get the cats in there somewhere, so we finally got. Do they not like each other?
They do not like each other.
Cats are such funny creatures. They have so much personality. I think we were discussing this when we met in person. I find cats so interesting because each one of them is so individual, and what one cat loves, another cat hates, and figuring out what your cat loves in particular is really interesting. So I'm with you on that one. Number 7, if you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
I would love to have the power to really understand people's motivations for things.
What job other than your own would you most like to attempt?
Ooh, now I love my job. I think that, especially owning my own business is wonderful, and I get to enjoy every day. But if I had to do another job, I would love to be a professor at a university. I have PhD aspirations, and I'm starting to look into that process after I finish up this master's program.
So next time I talk to you, I'll have to address you as Dr. Jones. Fair enough. What job would you definitely not like to attempt?
Being a driver of any sort, whether that is an Uber driver, a bus driver, anything like that. I am terrified of driving here in Philly, and I walk everywhere.
Is there some particular, is Philly known for bad driving, or?
Yes, very much so. That I do. If you come to Philly for the first time, I would recommend walking or taking public transportation, because driving can be a little scary. I'm slowly getting used to it, but I've lived here for 4 years now, and it could get a little scary sometimes.
I'm curious as to how it might compare to New York, because New York driving, I mean, it's not dangerous because you never move anywhere. You just basically sit in the car in traffic and you're like, I could get out and have got to my station. Anyway, final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I would like him to say that you did a job well done, and that you were kind to other people and made a difference.
Perfect. Well, Caroline, it's been a blast. It's been interesting, as always. I say always, it's been the second time, but, got a good track record so far. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. No, this was great. Thank you so much. I'm excited to, stay in touch and follow your journey as you write probably, one of many pageantry books.
We'll see how many I've got in me. It takes a while, and after you finish writing one, you probably need to leave it alone for a while and not go back there. And I'll keep you on the line for just a sec whilst I hang up with the audience. But thank you so much for watching or listening, and we will